Welcome to this episode of Round Robin. I'm Robin McCormick, Communications and Marketing Director for Hampton, and your host. And I have with me today a very special guest, Kirsten Talken-Spaulding, and she's the superintendent of our nation's newest national park or national monument. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Robin. I'm pleased to be here today.
And it's great to have you in Hampton and in Hampton Roads.
It's great to be back in Hampton Roads, actually. I grew up in Williamsburg, Virginia. And so the Hampton Roads, the peninsula, is my backyard. And I've spent 20 years with the National Park Service kind of traveling around a whole lot. And so really coming to Fort Monroe National Monument is certainly a homecoming for me. So I'm pleased to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. What are some of the other parks you worked at?
Well, I started really with the Virginia State Park System and worked a couple of state parks within the state of Virginia. And then after getting my good training with the Commonwealth, I moved on to another Virginia park, but that was Shenandoah National Park, which probably a lot of our viewers have been there. What an amazing
Beautiful
spot that
place.
is. Since then, I've traveled a good bit, a little bit on the East Coast. I've also been out on the West Coast and Mojave National Preserve, that's out in the desert area in between Death Valley and Joshua Tree National Parks.
Very different environment.
Very different environment, and even more different than that was Haleakala National Park on Maui.
Those were tough years,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
sure.
telling you. Yeah, I actually did learn to surf while I was out there, a big 9/0 board. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. But you know, that's the thing about the national parks. As you go to each park, they're unique in their own way, and they bring a story and an understanding, whether it's the cultural history or a natural history about the United States, that it's hard to get almost anywhere else. So it's great that we have a system of these units in the National Park System.
It is, and that's why we were so excited
to
Fort Monroe got to join that grouping.
Right. November 1st, 2011, President Barack Obama, his first use of the 1906 Antiquities Act, made that proclamation to create Fort Monroe National Monument. And truly, it was the citizens of Hampton that made that happen. The citizens in Hampton City and around this area that spoke up and said, no, these resources, these stories are so incredibly important to the nation that they need to be preserved and they need to be shared. And so I think that that's really the compelling thing that made Fort Monroe a national monument and made it available to the people.
But even so, we know with the political process the way it is, I'm still stunned. I mean, in 1995, I didn't think we had a really good chance, and really as recently as a year ago, I thought we were tilting at windmills. So.
Yeah, in 1995, I was actually at Mojave National Preserve. It had just come into the National Park Service. So that was the first time that I had ever worked in a new park. It took years for Mojave National Preserve to come on board. Years. So the use of the Antiquities Act, the quick turnaround that created Fort Monroe, you're right on the money, Robin. That it's not something that happens like that usually. It really is the strong voice of those here in the Commonwealth of Virginia that spoke up. And a lot of credit needs to go to both sides of the aisle here.
That's right.
in the Commonwealth, as well as the governor, who said, no, if the president utilizes the Antiquities Act, which, by the way, can only be used on federal lands, can't be used on non-federal lands. The governor then said, if you use the Antiquities Act, when the land reverts, we'll donate part of it to the National Park System so that it can be the grand space that it really should and is.
That's so exciting. And what Fort Monroe has is both the history and the natural beauty. I mean, you just can't find that many miles of undeveloped beach anywhere anymore. It's about I don't know how much the North Beach is, 1.5, 2 miles?
It's several miles. And really think about it this way. There's how many people in this metropolitan area? I think the statistic that I heard was something like over 1.7 million people within an hour's drive of Fort Monroe. And yet you walk out onto the beach, you walk inside that moated fort, and you're a world away. You are just a world away. And it gives you that opportunity to reach into the history, whether it's the human history and the cultural history, or whether it's the natural history. The hawks have been flying through in the fall season, and as spring is coming through, they'll fly through again. The beaches that are out there and the sense of peace as you sit out at the beach and you just listen to the waves move up and down. When there's a foggy morning, listen for the foghorns, and it's almost a symphony of horns of the ships coming through the channels there.
Yeah, I love it.
But you mentioned that there's a great cultural resources that are out there, cultural history. There's great natural history. There's also really incredible recreational opportunities at Fort Monroe as well. Whether you want to walk along or jog along the seawall, whether you want to bicycle around the area, there's fishing available. The city of Hampton is helping out dramatically with being able to provide lifeguards for Outlook Beach. And so during the beach season, there'll be lifeguards there. And here's the kicker. Come out to Fort Monroe, it's free.
Isn't that great? Now, how long is that going to last? Now,
I know I have
to pay to go to Yorktown Battlefield and
Right.
not Shenandoah National Park. Some of them do, and some of yes, you do. There's a car fee.
Yeah. As far as I know, we're in the planning process right now to understand what are our most significant resources. And part of just making those sorts of decisions, whether there are fees to be charged or not, is part of that planning process. I can't say that it'll never happen. I don't see it in the foreseeable future. But I'd also like to invite folks out not just to enjoy sort of the natural setting and the historic setting of Fort Monroe National Monument and really the entire peninsula of Old Point Comfort, but I'd like to also invite them out to our partner museum that's there. The Army did an incredible job with the Casemate Museum, exactly. And it's in transition from being an Army installation to being a Commonwealth of Virginia through the Fort Monroe Authority Museum. And you know how much it costs to get into that museum?
Tell me.
It's also free.
I know, isn't that great?
It's also free. And in fact, the Army has insisted that it remain free. So as far as I know, that's going to remain free as well. So really, what a great gift that the President, that the governor, and the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia have given the nation by making this area available.
It's wonderful. Now, what are you and your vast staff doing out there now?
Well, I think a lot of folks, they think about when a new park comes on board that there's some kind of magic box that you set on the table and you pull out your rangers and you pull out your visitor center and you pull out a bookstore and you pull out all of your programs. It doesn't actually happen that way. I started off by saying that the national parks are so incredible because they're each so unique.
That's right.
And a cookie cutter approach like that just wouldn't work. That's why the planning process is so important. And that's why we take a very strategic path to creating national parks. And that's kind of where we are this first year of existence for us. So the vast staff, as it's growing, we joke right now as we're taping this, it's really minuscule. We'll probably add a few more folks, but it really is going to be a partnership park. So while the National Park Service might not have legions of rangers that are on Fort Monroe, it is a partnership with the Commonwealth of Virginia and the Fort Monroe Authority and the city of Hampton to really create a safe and enjoyable atmosphere for folks to come out and enjoy all of the resources that are there on Fort Monroe.
All right, the number one question I get, and I know you can't answer this definitively, but I'm going to ask anyway, is, and the locals, I'll use the local terminology, which is, when is Dog Beach going to be open again?
Great. So the question about Dog Beach has to do a little bit with the land reversion. We're reverting from being a active military base. The BRAC closure that was decided many years ago identified and then kind of made the closing happen on September 15th of 2011. Since that time, the Army has been going through a transition time period where they do cleanup activities. You think about when you go into a neighborhood and you've got the neighborhood watch signs and it says, see something, say something, call this number. Well, the Army has that too. And so across the base, there are these signs that have Army phone numbers. Well, they need to be removed. There's other cleanup and takedown operations that need to happen. Part of that is Dog Beach as well, and there's cleanup that's happening at Dog Beach. So the Army has that closed as they're doing their cleanup, and they also have an incredibly reduced staff.
Right.
And so as the transition is happening, Dog Beach is closed. But I did get the question, when the land reverts and it's no longer part of the Army, what will the National Park Service be doing? Because that is indeed part of the national park area. I think that probably what we'll be doing is working in conjunction with the City of Hampton to make sure that we have good coverage by the City of Hampton Police Department. There's what's known as concurrent jurisdiction out there. So the city provides response. So it's a 911 call if you were to see something or if you needed assistance for emergency situation. And so we would want to make sure that the Hampton PD is available. Once they are, I could see those gates opening up. Probably like many of the other beaches in the area, it would be a dawn to dusk kind of operation.
Right, that's our official park hours, and so that's what we apply at Outlook Beach as well as at Buckrow.
Right, right. I would imagine that that's likely to be what we'll be doing. Again, that's kind of going to be informed by the planning process. We want to make sure that the resources are both utilized and taken care of.
Right.
A national park is in perpetuity. All things being equal, we hope it's in perpetuity. And with that in mind, we want to make sure that our resources are always available so we can, our children, our children's children can really enjoy Fort Monroe National Monument.
Well, and that's what I think people forget. When the Army was there were MPs everywhere, and there was a large staff, and you were safe walking up and down that beach. And until either you get more rangers or the Hampton Police can step in, until Parks and Rec can clean up litter, I mean, you have to make sure that things are safe and protected, and that does take some people. So
it takes people, and we also want to make sure, you know, that northern beach area, right off of the water there's some really wicked currents, and I would want to be clear that we would be able to inform people about the hazards
risks
of being out there, and ensure that they knew they needed to stay on the sand and not to go out into the water in that area. Just the same as when the Army was there as well. It was prohibited for wading and swimming.
Which I believe is why it's called Dog Beach, right? It was for civilians and dogs.
Yeah, that particular area of the park, what is going to be the park, actually was only open to military members when it was an active post. Or at least it was supposed to only be active military members that would be there. And so this is, again, opening up a whole new area that's going to be specifically for all of the visitors.
Right, it's very exciting. Well, what about historical interpretations? Do you know yet what kinds of programs you're looking at, or any sort of idea about when you might be able to do some of those?
Great question. The National Park Service is kind of known as the alternative teaching school. You know, we have park rangers across the country in our 397 units of the system that help tell the stories of our nation, again, either the cultural or the natural history of our nation. And so it's really important for the National Park Service to, as quickly as possible, provide some of that programming. Now, the Casemate Museum, which we mentioned earlier, is already providing some outstanding educational opportunities, which I think many of the City of Hampton schools already participate in going to the museum. So the National Park Service, the spring of 2012, began its planning for, actually started giving its programs already. So by the end of the spring, early into summer of 2012, we've got programs going already out in Fort Monroe.
And how can we find out more?
I was just going to say, let me point our listeners to some of the ways that they can find out about programming. The National Park Service has a website that's available across the country, and that is www.nps for nationalparkservice.gov. And to get specifically to the Fort Monroe website, you just add a / to it and then FOMR. So Fort Monroe, first two letters of Fort and then MR.
Okay.
And you can always find out what's happening within the park there. We're also working with our partner, the Casemate Museum and the Fort Monroe Authority, to do joint programming in the area. And so we hope to actually have folks like reenactors that'll come out, maybe even firing demonstrations. The Fort Monroe Authority has been fantastic in getting back the summer concert series.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Right.
I've been to those for years.
Exactly. So Music by the Bay is already going to be going again in the summer of 2012. And while the Tradoc Band may not be able to come out, we've got some incredible military bands from across the region that are going to be coming out. And I believe even the Virginia Symphony is going to be the culminating event for our music out in Fort Monroe. So it really is a partnership of the Commonwealth of Virginia, the City of Hampton, and the National Park Service in providing
That's great.
programming.
And you know, we just need to get on that list too, so we can distribute. We do a weekly e-news of events for residents
Absolutely.
of Hampton and put it on our website as well to help
Absolutely.
publicize it, because people are very eager
Yeah.
to go back out there and utilize whatever they can
And
do.
we want them to come, and we want everybody to know about the opportunities that are out here, whether they're a timed event like a program, or whether they're just the regular activities that are going on a regular basis. We want them to know about those things they can take advantage of. And so I invite folks to both go to that website. We also have a phone already set up for the park. It's a pretty easy phone number to remember. It's 757-722-FORT.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Okay.
So 757-722-3678. We're not always there to be able to answer the phone because we are rather short-staffed at the moment. We're endeavoring to work with the local universities to bring in interns and also utilize volunteers of the area. We've got some great skill sets of the folks that are retired or the military that are in the area that might be interested in volunteering. And so we hope to maybe utilize some of those folks to help us in our staffing as well.
Good. Now, one of the big symbols of the Park Service is the Arrowhead sign.
Indeed.
Do we know yet when that will be installed?
Well, for right now, it's not up at the time we're taping this because the lane hasn't reverted yet.
So you're still in that holding pattern until the title change. Okay.
So when we do see the title change, you'll see the arrowhead going up. You know, again, it's a partner area, so we're trying to decide, do we put it at the very front? And maybe folks will think that the entire peninsula is national park, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot of great folks that are doing things out there, and so we don't necessarily want to take credit for everything. It is a great marketing tool, though, for folks to recognize that they have a national park in their backyard.
Oh, it is. And all those studies from the National Parks Conservation Association and other people show it's an attractive place to live and work, for starters. Who doesn't want to be near a national park? It's beautiful, preserved land, but also that there are spin-off economic benefits and, you know, hotels and restaurants and visitors, and then people come and they go, wow, this is a great place. Maybe I'll retire here. So there are a lot of benefits that the Fort Monroe Authority and the city can get from having you around, Kirsten.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I think the latest study said something like for every $1 federal that goes into a place, 4 are turned around and given back to the local economy. So again, it's a pleasure to be part of the national park system, but it's really great to bring that to Hampton Roads and to the city of Hampton.
Well, thank you. And we are so glad to have you here in Hampton at Fort Monroe and visiting us today on Round Robin. I hope you'll come back and do some updates as things progress.
Would love to do that, and thank the visitors for their continuing interest in caring for Fort Monroe, and we look forward to their visit as well as yours.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching this episode of Round Robin. I hope you'll come back.